This is it, and I actually had people stop while I was installing it, thinking that it was a legitimate real estate sign. I have a dear friend he's in Wisconsin now. His name's Bill Amundsen, and I've shown with him a lot, and he has a very wicked sense of humor. And this, I have to give at least half credit to him because he does these exquisite little drawings that make fun of suburbia, and he very much inspired me to do this sign. This was a piece that was in the Texas Biennial in 2007. This was a cup piece, and it's very large. Each one of those sections is 10 feet by 10 feet, and there's probably about...
Was this by any chance installed in Dallas?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. Okay,
it wasn't.
Where was it installed?
It was installed in Austin.
Okay.
This was before they moved. They showed different venues. This was all in Austin.
All in Austin.
Yeah. And there's about, I'm guessing there's 2,300 cups in that. And this is, of course, a very iconic photograph for people of my generation because it was taken right before Kennedy was assassinated, and that's Jackie.
Yep.
This was this is a palindrome. I did a series of palindromes, being interested in language. And this was a palindrome I found in New Yorker magazine. It was from back in 1969, but most palindromes they're sentences or words or phrases that are spelled the same backwards and forwards, but they're usually like rat star or Madam, I'm Adam. They're usually very short, and this one man named Roger Angel came up with this amazingly long one. This is a phenomenal palindrome, and it sort of represents like a soldier in a ward with post-traumatic stress who's just kind of rambling and babbling during World War II. And so I knew I had to do something with this palindrome, and so I made the palindrome, and then I got this picture of a soldier and hand-tinted it and blew it up and mounted it, and it wasn't working at all. It just was not. I wasn't happy with it at all, and so I put it away. I put it aside, and the lettering is on plexiglass, and then the other part was separate. So I had them separated in my studio, and after a couple of moves and after a couple of times of trying to clean out my studio, I looked over and I noticed that he was upside down, and suddenly the answer came to me.
Yes.
Yeah, this little light bulb came off. But sometimes it helps to step away from your pieces, and sometimes the answer comes to you. So I was very happy with the fact that I was able to put that together. These are two large woodcuts that I've done, and they were.
Are these steamroller prints?
These are steamroller prints. They're
the
one on the left
is a steamroller print.
Huh?
For those who don't know, what is a steamroller print?
A steamroller print is it's a woodcut that is so large that it won't fit into a press, and so Stone Metal Press comes up with a program every year where they sponsor artists to come, and so you put the board down that you've carved on, and then they put the paper, then you ink it, and then you put the paper down, and then instead of running it through a press, a steamroller runs over it, and you get the print. And it's a great program, and so you're able to make these gigantic prints. The one on the left is 4 foot by 8 foot, and the one on the right is 4 foot by 6 foot. And I did these with a router, and I did the one on the left because every once in a while I want to see if I can still draw. I wanted to prove that I could actually draw, and so it was very painstaking. It was a lot more work than I've put into most of my artwork, and so I wanted to say, look, I can actually do something that is complex.
So what is this Bunny Phonic character?
Bunny Phonic is a performance artist
Right.
in town here, and she has this paper mache bunny mask, and she sings, she plays these doleful tunes on her accordion. And when I had completed the Eiffel Tower, which took me weeks and weeks to do, I had that blank space there, and it needed something, and so I decided to
send Bunny Phonic to Paris.
Send Bunny Phonic to Paris. I actually I had some alternatives that didn't really sit very well with me, and so I saw her perform one night, and I thought, well, isn't that cool? That would look great underneath the Eiffel Tower. And then the one on the right, of course, is self-explanatory. This was a show I had at the art guys are a pair of very, very talented and accomplished artists that live in Houston, and they have a space where they asked me to put on an exhibit of my work, and this was one of the walls, and they actually had a critic one time write a review that says, and the first paragraph was, "I just can't stand the art guys," and so I thought I would remind them.
Thank them for the invitation to show.
Thank you
right?
for the invitation. Here you go. And then this was on the other wall. It was made with campaign signs, and I wanted to do something that kind of stepped away from a strictly political statement. And so so I came up with this. I actually went to Barnes & Noble and bought a romance novel and came home and my wife says, "Are you sure you're going to be able to find a quote?" And it turns out like every single page has a paragraph like this. It's just, that's what romance novels are. So I thought it was a nice little confluence between politics and sex. This is a woodcut that I did, and it was, I'm sure most of you artists can relate to this because we seem to get asked to donate quite a bit. And so I decided to do a woodcut, and for 2 years, whenever I was asked to donate a piece of artwork, this is what I would donate. And
over and over again.
Over and over again, yeah. It was an unlimited
Did it
edition.
sell?
Yes, it did sell. That's the thing. And my wife was mortified when I was making this. She says, "You can't do that. You can't insult those people like that." You'd think she'd know me by now. You know, it's like, this is a public art project that I did at the airport, and they asked me, and I came up with of course, having to do with nostalgia and humor and travel. I did a series of billboards that looked sort of like decals or promotions or baggage labels that you used to put on your luggage. And amazingly enough, I came up with 8 of these, and I was almost positive that nobody was going to let me see the light of day with these. One thing I learned about doing public art is that people really don't like you to make fun of their cities. And so I am so pleased with San Antonio because I had to show these in front of a couple of panels of citizens, and I told the art people at the airport, I said, "You have to go to bat for me. You have to tell them that this is worthwhile, and this is a worthwhile project, and this is something that we need to do." And they didn't need to do that because every single citizen that saw it was on board with it, and I was really flabbergasted but pleased with San Antonio that they were able to make a little fun of themselves. So this one, the one on the left, is the first one you see, and it says San Antonio International Airport now open year round. And then the last one, that's the last one if you go into the airport and you go into paid parking and you get to the left and you go to long-term parking and take your ticket, you turn left and you drive down in front of the parking structure, and these are along the parking structure. And then right after mine are a series of Chuck Ramirez pieces. And then on the other side is a big Bill Fitzgibbons sculpture. And inside of it is a really cool light piece by an artist named Chris Chaney. So this parking garage has a lot of really nice artwork in it. And you get a half an hour for free, so you can view this for free.
Actually, it's 15 minutes now.
Oh, it is? It's down to 15 minutes? Oh, okay. Well, it doesn't take you that long. So this was another one that I did. This was an artist, Jack Ballas, was asked to do a series of photographs of artists for the Museum of Contemporary Art in Denver, and he asked me to partake in this. And the artist was free to come up with their own self-portraits. He wanted you to do a self-portrait that showed the real essence of yourself, and so that's basically what I did. This was a series that I did. This was a series of metaphors that I did.
And this was here at Solidus.
This was at Solidus. I was dying to make. I wanted to make a house of cards, and I wanted to build a sculpture that was a house of cards. And then I couldn't figure out what I wanted on the cards. First I thought I would have regular playing cards, but I really wanted to kind of go a little deeper than that. And then I started to do something that was a little bit political, and then I thought that would take away from things. So anyway, I decided that I would just use. Since the house of cards, whatever I did, it was going to be a metaphor for a house of cards, I decided to just use metaphors. And so I wrote down I threw out all the metaphors that I could with literary and cinematic and artistic. And so I built a house of cards made out of metaphors. This was a video that I took. My wife and I were in Asia. And we were in Shanghai, and we had been walking around all day, and I was tired, and all I wanted to do was take a nap. And we were on the 20th floor of this really nice hotel, and Janet looked out, and she says, well, you should see this really weird exercise that these policemen are doing. And they were, and this was a terrace. This was another hotel. There was a terrace, and then there was, and so I got up and I walked over, and there was all these policemen, and there was a guy sitting in a chair, and these people were coming up behind him and yanking him out of the chair. And so I got my camera, and then I looked over, and there was a big crowd, and then I looked down, and there was this big blow-up platform, and then I looked up, and this woman was sitting on the ledge about to jump, or thinking about jumping. And so I was able to videotape it, and I made it into a short film. Fortunately, it's called Shanghai Drama, and she was pulled to safety. But for about a half an hour, we were pretty panicked that I would have to. I mean, there was no way I was going to ever show somebody jumping to their death, which she probably would have done. And I mean, a fireman told me that that platform was. There was no way that platform was going to save her life. She was that high up, and so she was talking on her cell phone, and so we were. It was an amazing event that we were able to capture. This is a word piece that I did in Xi'an, China, and they have an expression that it says "ma ming qi miao," which means nobody can understand the wonder and mystery of it all. And what they do is they say that if you're acting stupid, and so that's how I guess that's how they chastise you. But I thought it was such a great expression, and so I put it up on the wall, and I had to do this real fast because
this was guerrilla style.
This was guerrilla style.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't ask permission in China to do anything. The piece on the right is from our visit to Asia, and in China they have these citizens brigades. They don't have graffiti because they have these citizens brigades that will immediately paint over anything you put on the wall. But I noticed that there were these numbers, these series of numbers that were written in like a Sharpie pen on these walls, and I asked our guide what it was, and he was very hesitant. He says those are advertisements, and he wouldn't really talk about it. And I found out later that that's a cell phone number that you call, and people come over and buy your prescription drugs from you that are out of date or expired or you're not using anymore. And it kind of gave me this creepy thought that they recycle them back into they just take them and resell them, that there's this whole black market in expired prescription drugs. So I made
and
that.
speaking of-
I cut that out of plywood.
And speaking of another drug, the anthrax
Yeah,
installation,
this is the man that they're pretty sure was responsible for the anthrax attacks, and there was a picture of him in a high school science fair, and so I decided to make like a science fair project out of it, and a picture of this wholesome high school guy, and then that's the note that he left. So I thought I would combine the two. So a lot of my artwork is sort of it's sort of humorous, but kind of sometimes in a creepy, serious kind of way. And
these are two examples.
These are two examples.
And finally, the last images we're going to see are about a work in progress.
This is a work in progress, and I'm very excited about this. This is down in the recently operated river extension. They asked
Mission Reach.
The Mission Reach. They have these benches, and they asked artists to submit proposals for these benches. And I've always wanted to. This is made out of the same material that the parking garage. It's a ceramic baked enamel, and I don't know if you've ever been to a battlefield, but they often have these little tableaus that you can read along, and you can read how the battle unfolded and how the days go, and you're looking out into the Gettysburg, and this is where Little Round Top is and stuff. And so my parents I was a big Civil War buff, and my parents drove me around all these battlefields, so it's part of my youth. And so I decided to create this fictitious battle in the San Antonio River, and the place that this is showing, the river's about half the size of this room wide. And so I basically took all the most famous naval battles in history and combined them into one big 3-day naval battle. And it starts out where the Carthaginians are coming up the river to look for a passage to India, and the Spanish Armada is coming down to get to the Gulf, and they engage in battle. And then the British Navy comes and comes and reinforces, and then I think. Does it show? Oh, yeah, this is.
We have two of the panels.
Yeah, can you read those at all? No?
Tell us what they say. In short, in brief.
Okay. Well, then, I mean, everything comes. The Japanese fleet comes, and a South Korean naval a series of small boats. But of course, it transcends time and things. And towards the end, just when it looks like one side's going to win, then a group of German U-boats come up the river and start sinking things. And then the USS Midway comes and sinks all the German U-boats. And anyway, it's the battle. It's the Battle of San Antonio River.
When do you think the project will be actually installed?
Well, I don't know. It's up in the. It's up being manufactured up in Tumwater, Washington, right now, and I hope it'll probably take a couple weeks, and then we're going to build a bench around it. But there's really no timeline. But I imagine
we can all look forward to sitting amidst the battle.
I hope so.
Yes. And with that, we'd like to thank Gary and turn the lights on, and we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And we have a microphone that will be passed to you if you have a question. So if you want to just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question of Gary. Somebody must want to know something. Okay, in the back there. Let's start in the back. Well, do you have the microphone there?
What sparked my humor in my art? I don't know. That's a good question, but my parents enjoyed humor, but they enjoyed my parents were older than considerably older when they had my sister and me, and their humor was actually kind of corny, but they did enjoy the comedians on the Ed Sullivan Show, and so I imagine that our house was a fairly joyous place with a lot of laughter. But I used to read. I kind of got. You read Mad Magazine and like the Smothers Brothers, and so our generation kind of, and the National Lampoon has sort of developed a sort of a more of a biting, ironic type of humor, and I just love that kind of stuff, and I never stopped loving that kind of thing, and so and Saturday Night Live, of course. But I don't know if your humor comes just from your nature and disposition, but I can tell you that you would think that, well, my parents were always really hilarious. Well, they really weren't, but I kind of developed it on my own. And I think and what's funny is that when I go to high school reunions and things, the people, I think.
Were you the class clown?
Yeah, so, well, yeah, that probably goes without saying, but I have always enjoyed a really juvenile sort of sense of humor.
Another
Gary.
question for Gary?
Gary.
We have a question all the way in the front, unless there's something in the back since the microphone's back there. Okay, let's take the questions in the back and then we'll move forward.
Gary, oh, now it's working. Okay.
I want questions from anyone but Chris Souter.
It seems to me that your early mature work seems to be about immortalizing your family. Was that conscious or
About
subconscious?
immortalizing my family?
Yeah.
I don't think that yeah, you might be right, because I just had such a treasure trove of resources. I mean, my father took 1 million pictures, and it was such an easy target to go through them. And but I think what strikes people with that is that I found that everyone can relate to that sort of thing. They can relate to driving vacations in the station wagon in the 50s, and where the father was working in such a way we were so amazingly typical. And I think that's where maybe it engages people, because everyone I know, people come up to me and say, oh, my family did exactly the same thing. We went to exactly that same tourist trap, and we did this. And so it was not unusual at all. It wasn't, there wasn't anything startling about it. So, but it was pretty universal that this is the way life was. So I think I'm trying to capture, of course, I think it's cool that I'm able to include my family and pay homage to my grandmother and parents and stuff, but I think it's mostly like I'm highlighting an entire generation and the way America was at the time.
Another question?
Something simple.
We had some questions down in the front. Okay, you want to bring the mic? Ricky has a question, I think.
This is a great turnout. I even have my neighbors here. My neighbors are here, but it's because I told them we were all coming here to see Laser Zeppelin.
Gary,
Oh.
I wanted to ask, I've always wondered about your day job and how it either helps or hinders or facilitates the artist's career. In your particular case, being a baggage handler, can you just kind of talk briefly about what that does for your career?
Actually, that's a very good question, because I'm somebody that has a day job that doesn't have anything to do with artwork. And that's kind of unusual, because generally artists find themselves, before people recognize their brilliance, they find themselves getting into jobs that somewhat tangentially relate to artwork. And because most of the jobs you get in your life, you get through your friends. And so for about 12 years, I was, my baggage handling was my only source of income. I didn't sell very much artwork, but fortunately, it's kind of reversed itself now, so that I'm able to make a living doing artwork, and my baggage handling is sort of an escape from the art world. And it can kind of, it's a perfect job for me, because it's mindless physical labor, and it allows me to travel. My wife's a flight attendant, so we get to travel. So I could not have mapped out a more perfect job for my particular sensibility and lifestyle, but it really has nothing to do with it. The people that I work with know that I do artwork, and I'm sure a lot of them are just baffled by my other, the stuff that I do. Although I will give credit, there's some of my coworkers here tonight. I'd like to thank them for showing up. But I actually had one say, "Gee, hey, gosh, Gary, isn't it? It's kind of cool that you just get to do this weird stuff and you get paid for it."